We have a new multi-tool on the table today, and it is one of the most expensive production multi-tools that you can currently buy. This is the Snap-on SMT97R. We're going to talk all about it and answer the question, is it worth the $200 price tag that they're asking for? So let's start with something that they actually changed that isn't normally on a Gerber multi-tool. The plier head for this is a little bit different than anything you will see, and that has to do with the teeth itself. This is something I really like, and I've been enjoying in the dedicated pliers that they have available. This crosshatch pattern in the teeth is going to offer a lot of grip, and I really do like that a lot. Now here is an issue though that I have. This came very tight. So I'm going to need to do some major work for it to be useful in its current form. It just doesn't have the same, let's put it this way, it just doesn't have the same ease of motion as my other Gerbers do. Now, part of that is use, but I would imagine that this is a little bit of overpeening, a little bit of over-tuning on their part. It's not the only thing that is a little too tight on this tool. So we're going to start by saying great job on the shape of the plier, and also worth noting in comparison to this one, very different shape also. This is the sight tool from Gerber, and actually is one of the closest equivalents to this particular model from Toolset. You can also see they even use the same plastic components on the outside. So they are relatively similar in dimension, pretty much across the board. And yeah, we'll keep talking about that in this video. Now, one of the things I absolutely despise about Gerber is they refuse to update their god-awful carbide cutters. I have had 2 sets of carbide cutters shatter within 2 uses of the tool. And I mean shatter, like into dust. In fact, it led me to discover that they make USA-made speed steel cutters that fit the center drive, the MP600, and many others. And they're actually about the same price, believe it or not, as the ones you will buy on Gerber's website. I would love to see them upgrade this, and for something that's $200, I think Snap-on should certainly consider it, especially because you can get those cutters right here in the US. And I will put a link down in the description about where you can find those. Now, going to the inside of this tool, once again, we have another issue with how tight they are. Not as much on this, but very much so on the inside tools. I have a very hard time getting those out, to the point where I have to kind of, let me show you just how tight these are. Like, it's so tight, the weight of the tool can barely open the damn thing. It definitely needs an adjustment. Thankfully, that is pretty easy to do. Well, all you have to do is grab this with a screw plier and loosen it. I don't know if that's going to affect the warranty though, so do that with caution. But in my particular instance, I'm definitely going to need to do that. So we have a flathead. We have a partially serrated blade. We're going to talk a lot about this blade a little bit later when we get to the other side. We have a Remgrit saw holder. Now, this is an old style T-shank style saw. I really wish they would upgrade to carrying something that uses a standard T-shank. If they could do that, and Leatherman has shown that you can in fact do this, I think that it would be far more versatile. I have pretty much never seen these saw blades around. There's very few and far between, but as an actual saw, it's fine, and it actually is going to be pretty decent on soft steel and some other things as well. There's also a small flathead on the inside, which frankly is also really difficult to get out. Not impossible, but difficult, very difficult. Definitely needs to be loosened up a little bit. So a small flathead here. I'm not a huge fan of small flats in multi-tools, they always end up getting broken. And it's definitely something that you want to be careful with. Now, this tool is much more useful, and also worth noting that this will work with the Leatherman bit adapter. Here, let me go show you what I'm talking about. Now, these are relatively hard to find right now. You're pretty much exclusively going to find them on Leatherman's website, but they do actually function with a lot of different multi-tools, not just the ones designed by Leatherman, which I love. I love that they are kind of able to be used pretty much anywhere, and this is one of those applications. And yeah, just slots perfectly right onto that Phillips. It not only will let you use the Leatherman bits, which it comes with, it'll also let you use the Weha double-sided bits. Let's see, do I have those right now? Oh, I do. Here we go. It'll let you use these, which work great in this particular driver. And there you go. So, not from Gerber. Gerber should make their own, but they don't. But something worth noting. All right. And then the last thing we have here is a file. And actually, this one is nice. It's actually got pretty aggressive single cut and cross cut on there. So that's pretty much the tool set. For $200 though, is it delivering on something that I would use every day? Well, there's a couple fundamental flaws that I want to go over. So first off has to do with the type of tool it is. In order to access anything on the inside, it's like a 5 or 6 step process. Slide out, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now it's ready to be used. That's a lot more involved than something like the center drive, which is just a single motion for a couple of the different implements, or any other multi-tool that has outside accessible tools like the Swiss Tool MX clip, which I carry the most, and things like that. So there is some speed issue when it comes to using the tools on the Gerber. And I think individuals who probably are mechanics, most likely, who are likely to pick up a snap-on multi-tool, time is of the essence. I wouldn't want to be fiddling with stuff and taking that much time. You know, in reality, I'm just going to use it for the pliers. But is it good when it comes to the pliers? This is where there's a fundamental flaw in this design that may actually break the tool itself. That might make it unusable. Now, I caught this after reading some comments about the tool on Snap-on's website, and it reminded me of the same problem which happens in the Gerber center drive, but is actually fixable in the center drive where it's not so with the Snap-on variant. The reason it's an issue is if you look on this side, I forgot, I'm sorry, hold on a second. I forgot an entire tool here somehow. We also have a scissor, which actually is pretty good. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, actually, very good. Gerber actually makes pretty good scissors, believe it or not. And this is no exception. These actually work very, very well. Okay, so sorry about that. We did forget the scissor. So let me go back. So we have the scissor across from the blade, which is proud. It's proud, right? It comes up above the frame. Now, there are other blades, which I will show you in a few minutes, that do not have this issue where they come up too high. Notice that what happens is like when you squeeze it, these two pieces of metal actually come in contact with each other. When you are trying to grab something that is a thin piece of metal, there needs to be some amount of distance for the handles to travel in order for there to be clamping pressure on that thin piece of metal. And one of the things that everyone mentions is that there is simply nowhere for this to go. If you look at basically the most, well, not that one. If you look at the sight tool, which has a almost identical, actually I think it is the identical blade. Hold on a second. I think it is the same blade. It is. Yeah, it has the same blade. There's plenty of space. Now watch what happens when I squeeze the plier head. I can actually still make them touch, but it does allow me to have some pressure on whatever it is I'm grabbing on. So if you could see how much travel that is, you need at least that much space to get the full usage out of the pliers. I think this is a serious issue when it comes to a tool that is likely to be used for automotive. And I just recently changed out brakes. And brake pads sit within these little thin sheet metal springs. And if I were to try to grab one of those with this snap-on plier, I probably would slip out very easily because I can't apply enough pressure. So I think it's a pretty big problem that they have set themselves up with. And it's not that it's hard to fix. In fact, let me just go to probably my favorite Gerber of all time, the MP600 blunt nose. I love this thing, especially the one that has no cutters, because it is as beefy and tough as possible. Now notice there's this big gap between all the tools, giving you ability to squeeze and put a lot of pressure on it. And the comfort of the MP600 really lets you lay into those pliers, which I love. I do absolutely adore this model. Anyway, notice that the blade is completely flush with the tang. Now this is a serrated blade, but they have straight blades or partially serrated blades from Gerber that basically do the same thing. All they have to do with the snap-on is to change out the blade to one that is flush with the frame, and it will alleviate the problem that it has. But as it sits, I think for its primary purpose, which is probably a tool that a lot of mechanics are likely to pick up, I think it kind of falls down pretty heavily, and if only just for that one mistake. Otherwise, I actually really like the tool set as far as the MP600 is concerned, and I particularly love the way they have changed the plier. It's a nice, hefty needle nose plier, and I imagine it works very, very well. I gotta wonder though, why would someone pick this over the tool set for the center drive, which in many ways is probably better right now? Not only does it have spring-loaded pliers with a similar setup on their teeth, it has the access to a extended bit driver, which is inline, center drive, right? It has similar issues with the space, but here's how you fix that with the center drive. Check this out. All you have to do is take the bit holder and rotate it out when you're squeezing on something very thin. And if you do that, it will extend past the handle, giving you the space necessary to squeeze and put pressure on that thin piece of metal. So this is easy to fix when you have that particular scenario. Notice that they touch, right, when you squeeze them, when you squeeze the handles, but not so with the snap-on variant. So I don't regret buying it in that I like this as a data point in the collection. But if you're considering it for your purposes, well, maybe they need to update it first, because I can technically modify it or put another blade in there and it would probably work great. But at that point, I doubt that warranties are going to be covered. And maybe it's just better to get the center drive over the snap-on and you'll probably get a better use. Or something like the dual force, which I've already talked to a couple of mechanics and they've actually been pretty pleased with these particular slip joint pliers. So nice strong pliers with a really long handle, and then everything else is on the outside. You have the files, the chisels, the blades, the saw, and of course the center drive component. Both of these I think are going to end up being a better option for you than the one that's made by Snap-on. And I really hope that they will fix the problems with it, maybe even come up with a new model. I mean, this has been around for more than a decade. I think it's time for an update. What do you think, Snap-on? Anyway, let me know down in the comments. Am I way off base? Is this a much better tool than I think it is? Or could Snap-on use an update? Let me know. Anyway, thanks again, as always, for your time, and we'll talk again soon.